Hi, I'm Jeff Potter, author of Cooking for Geeks. Today I'm going to show you how to do a simple stuffed pork chop. First we're going to brine the pork chop for an hour in a saltwater solution. Take your salt, add it to the water, and if you need to mix it up a little bit, you can do so with a spoon. Then take your pork chops, drop them in. So the question is with brining the pork chops, there's the standard theory is that it actually helps them become juicier in a certain way because it pulls moisture in, but it's actually not entirely clear how it actually works mechanically. The standard conventional wisdom is that the salt water actually improves the amount of water content in the pork. There's some question as to this actually, but the salt itself, of course, makes the pork chop taste better. So I actually sometimes skip this step. If I'm coming home from a day at work and I just want to make a quick stuffed pork chop, I'll actually skip brining it, but it does make it taste a little bit better just by adding a little bit of salt into the meat. So I'm going to put this in the fridge for about an hour. While the pork chops are brining, let's make a simple stuffing of Poblano pepper and cheddar cheese. You can also use other soft cheese like a Monterey Jack. So take your pepper, slice the top and the bottom off, and then cut through the side. You can go through and remove the ribbing and any seeds if you like, although they have a lot more heat. And if you like your dishes spicy and hot, you can leave more of them in. Take your pepper and slice it into thin strips, and then we'll cut it the other direction and dice it up. So keep in mind that the stuffing needs to be something that's small enough to be able to work inside of a pork chop that you've slit, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So take your pepper, drop it in a bowl, and then take your cheese, and just like the pepper, you want to chop it up into small blocks, small cubes. You can grate this as well, but in the interest of saving dishes, I find it's easier just to chop it up. Size really isn't important as long as it's small enough to get inside that pork chop when you stuff it. So a bit of black pepper and a good pinch of salt, and there's our simple stuffing. So it's been about an hour. Our pork chops have been brining in the fridge. As I said earlier, if you're just coming home and you want to do this fast and quick, you can skip the brine step, but assuming that you've brined them, pull them out of the fridge, take the pork chop, and so being careful with your hand not to actually skewer yourself, push the knife in and just kind of work it up and down. And you should be able to feel the meat give as you get a cavity. And you can stick your finger in there kind of to check that you've got a good cavity. So I've got one down, I'll grab the other one and do the same thing. So once you've cut your slits, take the meat and just kind of pat it dry. Once you've got the meat patted dry in the paper towel, we're going to take and, just using your hand, stuff that slit you filled with some of the stuffing. When I make the stuffing, I make enough for at least 4 pork chops, but oftentimes I'm only cooking 2, as I am today. You can take the extra stuffing and use it the next morning on scrambled eggs or something else, but it's much easier just to actually make a full pepper plus cheddar cheese worth of stuffing than it is to try to do half a pepper. So once you have your pork chop stuffed, about a tablespoon or so of stuffing, just kind of whatever fits into the meat. First, take a little bit of olive oil, and we're going to coat each side of the pork chop with a little bit of oil. And this is just to help prevent it from sticking to the pan. And then a small sprinkle of salt just for taste. So our pan's been preheated, medium heat. We're going to cook these guys for about 5 to 7 minutes per side with a probe thermometer in them, such that we know when the internal temperature has reached 145 degrees. So it's been about 7 minutes, and it's time to flip these guys. So it's been 7 minutes, and on the dot, our timer tells us that the internal temperature is 145 degrees. So what we're going to do here, pull these guys off of the pan. Don't worry about if you've got any cheese kind of popping out of the end on the pan. Turn the pan off and move it aside. And let these guys sit here and rest for a couple of minutes. I leave the probe in here just to kind of keep an eye on it, make sure that it stays up above temp for at least a minute. You'll have carryover continuing to heat that meat up for a minute or two after you pull it off the pan, so it's a good idea to let it rest anyway. Take your pork chops, which have had a few minutes to rest, and cut them on the diagonal. And you can take a peek to actually see that the middle of it has a nice kind of, well, it looks like it's cooked. So a bit of our rosemary mashed potato. And our 2 pieces of pork chop. Maybe a little sprig of rosemary. And a few flakes of salt. And there you go. Roasted poblano pepper, cheddar cheese stuffed pork chops on top of rosemary and mashed potatoes.